All right, gambling. So we were talking about gambling and what to do and what not to do, and we've all got bets. I may actually have a couple of bets, but I stopped betting. I haven't betted for years. But if I was going to gamble, it would be on Australian football. I would do it on the football, just a win-loss.
Aussie rules?
And, Aussie rules. And Geelong, your team, is a good gauge. They're a good gauge because they get good odds. Because they're one of the favourite high-level teams, if you can judge when you think they're going to lose, then the other team is often going to get some really good odds. You're going to get some 5-6 to 1 really good odds in that case. So
there's not many times I back them, and one of the reasons is the odds are just not great.
They're not good odds, but if you can get a 5 or 6 to 1, I remember Carlton played Essendon a few years ago, and I just felt like Essendon were going to win, and it was paying 8 to 1. And even though I'm a Carlton supporter, I was like, do you know what? If I had money, I would be putting it on Essendon. I don't think Carlton are going to win today. So you don't have to be exactly loyal, but I think you mentioned earlier, Ross, that sometimes you can pick the Brisbane Lions against a team like Essendon, or vice versa, and you can feel a win coming along, and it's probably going to be about 7 or 8 to 1 when it does, and that would be a good bet to have if you're going to put your $500 on it. Have one big bet once a year, $500 rather than 50 little bets that are just sniffing around. Just do one bet. You take your winnings, and you spend it on something good. Don't spend it back on gambling. Take it and buy something.
I find I bet on the AFL less for the money I'll win, even though I love the collection of it. But it's more for the interest in games that you might not have. You've got two teams that you kind of detached from because you're not actually following them. So the gambling part might be just purely so I've got a vested interest in it. But Supercoach covers that because you're kind of interested in. Yep. You've always got a player from a certain team, but I don't bet on footy much. That's one of the areas I really don't bet on footy.
There's two guys, Campbell Brown and Kingy. They do the analysis every week on a Thursday, and they'll give you the odds, and they'll both tell you, or it could be Lloydie. They'll give you the odds on who they think's going to win. Is it Duck? It's the Duck. So anyway, if you're going to do so, one of the tactics that I'll use is I'll actually listen to both of them, and then record it or watch the recording back after the games and see who was right and who's actually who's on a good rhythm. Because I tell you what, I actually just watched Campbell Brown, and I think he got about 2 out of 8 right, and he's meant to be the guy who's the leading hand at it. So if he's only getting 2 out of 8 right, geez, I tell you what, it's not a good idea to be betting every week on it. That's worse than the roulette wheel.
Roscoe, this year was probably the hardest year in my experience for tipping. How did you? Didn't you do quite well this year?
I stuffed up the last round, but I came second in my tipping. I did okay.
Second. So that's a silver medal in 2017. I reckon also, arguably, actually, I'd like to bounce it off you guys. Richmond's premiership in 2017, I think, is the hardest premiership to win. Your thoughts? In history.
2017.
This year, I reckon, was the most evenest competition I've ever seen. What do you guys think?
Well, Carlton beat GWS, and GWS had a star-studded lineup, and Carlton were pretty average. They were a pretty average team. So when you have games where somebody finishing the top 3 or 4 gets done by the bottom 3 or 4, I think GWS were the unknown Like they're just so good one week and so terrible the next. Melbourne, St Kilda, Essendon, these type of teams, Collingwood, they were just so inconsistent. They
consistent as well, actually, for a top four side. Along with
I've got a theory on that, Tony. The hardest season ever to win, based on regular season and just how hard it was to tip, and you couldn't pick a team each week during the regular season. The final series was completely different. It was blowout central, and that's the bit that I can't reconcile. How literally, and then Richmond managed to blow out teams, or Adelaide did until they got beaten, and so I'm not saying it wasn't the hardest season to win, but if you think about final season or series where there are just blockbuster games where people fight tooth and nail. There was only one game that was close, and that was the Port Adelaide and West Coast game that went down to the wire. The rest of them were all fucking blowouts. So that was, for it to be the most difficult season or one of the great seasons, I just think the final series lost it. But we all look at the Tigers, winning it and everyone getting behind them. But
that's the thing. Were Richmond that good, or were Adelaide just not into it? Do you know? Was it? No, I felt that Richmond got I felt that Richmond felt that Adelaide had turned it up a little bit, and they how they were talking about the Richmond pressure was so good. Well, I tell you what, when you smell a weakness, it's amazing how you can just lift that little bit extra, because you can feel I tell you what, if they're not going to bring it today, I'm going to bring it just that little bit more. It's like the go for the kill, and that's what Richmond did. I don't think Adelaide were up for the game. I think they just they threw the towel in at some point.
I found that.
So Tony Duke, your team would have beaten Adelaide in that day.
Oh yeah, I'd agree. I mean, well, I went to week one, and I was on the ground before the game. It was a very, very privileged position to be in, and there was 90-odd thousand there, and there was 60,000 Richmond supporters, and I was up one end. I didn't go to my seat at any time. I was in standing room because I preferred it, and they weren't playing well. It was the damn wall burst in the last quarter, but we were in it. We were less than 3 goals down at 3/4 time. It was I don't know, 16 points or something, 13 points at 3/4 time. Both teams weren't playing that well. With Richmond's, I saw disposal efficiency was at 60 or 50%. It was both teams were pretty poor. But yeah, they got us through. What I found was the home ground factor, which I hadn't really seen. I mean, maybe Hawthorn versus Sydney. I guess maybe Collingwood versus Brisbane Lions, but it seemed. I mean, Richmond had Richmond had Rance, Dusty Martin in his best season ever. Re-rock doing quite well. Pardon me?
One of the great seasons.
Of his career, I mean.
No. I'm talking of AFL players.
Oh,
Norm Smith, the whole,
all time. I didn't think of that. All time. He's really in a purple patch. He held out with his contract, signed just before the finals, and it just seemed kind of they were kind of destined. I remember when we kicked our first goal, and it felt like the second quarter. I can't remember. I remember it was like soccer. It was like, yes, we kicked the goal, and there was a bit of sledging either side of us going, it's just one goal, mate, and it proved to be the thing. But so I don't know. Yeah, the grand final. I mean, Adelaide blew us out. I don't think GWS were in it either. GWS and Geelong were kind of in the same boat. We just, for some reason, we weren't at that level. Adelaide was, but Richmond was the defensive team of the year, and defense wins championships.
Well, Sydney Swans they had a lot of momentum going into the finals. They lost the first 6 games of the year, and then going into the finals, they were probably the best team. People were tipping them as an outsider to cause an upset, but it just didn't happen. Like I think if you're on a big roll and you've got this momentum, it has to come to an end. It doesn't seem to last for like 15 weeks. As I think you can't lose your first 6 and then expect to come home with a big sale and win a grand final. It's just, it's gonna come unstuck 1 week.
Roosie, their coach, said that. He said that after they lost. He goes, "Well, we've been playing elimination finals for 15 weeks or something." Like,
is that what he said?
Yeah, you just echoed pretty much. He was going, we were under the pump, and
Essendon, to be honest, after all their saga, there's no way they're going to come back and win a flag, with a half-baked team and John Worsfold and just, running some, like, I don't know, their whole team play, they were so inconsistent. I think Ross mentioned it earlier that Fitzroy were even a chance against them. And, Fitzroy, North, Carlton, we were on the bottom of the ladder. Yet when we played Essendon, we think, wait a second, we're a chance. And Carlton even beat Essendon as well. So they weren't a premiership team, Essendon. They weren't even a finals team. I thought they were lucky to make the finals.
Agreed. Collingwood should have been there, I reckon.
Yeah, right. Collingwood, they had a bit bad run with injuries, and their forward line had no structure either. Like Mason Cox, he's actually not bad, but Mason Cox and Moore, they don't seem to gel well together. They don't have that, that Hawthorn, have Ruffy and all those forwards that seem to just tap the ball to each other nicely, and they have all their rovers working well. Well, Elliott was out for quite a bit, and Moore and the big American just didn't seem to. They don't gel well. They don't run well together.
Cox is
yeah. So Cox, he's a good player. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't think he's not working well they don't have a good system up front there. Mind you, Fasolo is so you got Fasolo, Elliott. Fasolo, there was rumours that he was going to move to Freo. I don't know what's going on there, but it's nah. So they do have a good forward line, Collingwood. Fasolo, Elliott, Moore, Cox, and then you'll have a few, you'll have a few running through there, from the on-ballers as well. But they do have goal kicking ability, so that's something that Swans have always got with Buddy and the whole big forward line that they've got. What about Fitzroy, mate? I say Fitzroy, the Brisbane Lions. What's your? Because you've lost Shacky. Shacky's gone, and he was he was a potential draft. He was a second draft pick, and was he a centre forward?
Full forward, centre forward. Go to the article underneath, Tony. It's the more telling one. We cut five people who were who have been reasonably big for our list. We cut Michael Close, Dane Beam's brother, who
Clay
Dane
Beams,
Beams. Yeah, Clay. Dane moved up to Brisbane to play with Clay and be close to his dad. Irishman Kieran Hanley, who's Pierce Hanley's brother. Matt Hamilman, he was kind of okay. Reuben William, he was like he's a Sudanese guy. They're quality players or guys that previously be like they're going to develop into something. The 5 that we've just cut have been, well, not ruthless, but have shown me that we fucking mean business.
In what way?
Michael Close was one of our future forward structure guys that we're going to used to shape the forward line. Clay Beams has been played probably half games in the seniors and was certainly a leader in the NEAFL team. Kieran Hanley, he's kind of struggled. Matt Hamilman up and coming, but Ruben Williams is like literally. Chris Fagan has said, we're not taking mediocrity or players who might make the list. We're taking it a step further and looking at elite talent. So it's just stuff Brisbane hasn't done. We haven't made the tough delistings probably in the last 4 or 5 years that I've just seen. I didn't know. I just literally read that article a couple of minutes ago while you guys are talking. They all played in the NEAFL Premiership. So they're meant to be our next tier coming up to help the Lions grow, and they've been cut. So
what's the
Fagan business? Go to market, go to draft market and get talent. Go to draft market and get elite talent, and not people that will prop a list up, but you want your strongest 22 to be as elite as possible. So I think that's something that Brisbane sort of had. You might have a strong 10 or 11 players, but the other 11, 12, 13 might not make an AFL list or might struggle to. Brisbane's kind of said we're not going to have any ambiguity around that. We've got we want 22 players that are 22 premiership players, or what we consider.
I see that there. Clayton Freeman, Groar, Harwood, Jansen.
Yeah, we've cut. Wouldn't normally cut.
Yeah.
It
was a good year.
The big out is losing your former captain Tom Rockcliffe. That's huge. So, do you think that's because you've lost your former captain and you've got rid of him? Do you think the coach has just said, right?
He's the type of guy that will slap you and say, why have you got the go-home factor? Harden up, toughen up. He's not a captain that will galvanise. You want someone that will say, come on, boys, let's go once more into the breach, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Henry the V, as Jim Gaetano said in high school, Henry the Fifth. But you want that, and someone who keeps you accountable, but you don't want someone that calls you a fag or questions your manhood and stuff like that. And that's what Tom Rockcliffe did, and it was divisive. He wasn't able to win hearts and minds. And I loved him as a player, but he's not part of Brisbane's next premiership team.
Well, when talking about Brisbane premierships, when you won 3 in a row, I was actually, that 3 years, I didn't follow football. For the only time of my whole life, basically, from the age of 6, I haven't followed football with the 3 years that you won your flag. So I actually didn't watch any games. I didn't watch any Brisbane Lion games where you were at your best. So I missed out on a lot of that era. The Jonathan Brown, Aka, all those players, you know, that was so good. I actually didn't watch footy because I was in Japan, which is a pity. But you did. You actually had you bought the service, didn't you? You had a computer and set it up and watched all the games a day later. Is that right?
And that was family time. That was almost you know, when you go overseas or you might be away and your mum or your dad want you to go to church each Sunday, and it's almost like continuing a ritual. So for me, it was buying the AFL subscription, and I had Skype. Skype was very much in its infancy, and I think I had to pay for credit at that time. But the Lions would be on. I'd ring Dad, and young Will would be next to me, and we'd talk footy for an hour, and it was my bonding time.
That's great, mate. That is absolutely fantastic. See, I didn't do that at that stage, and I reckon if I did, I would have enjoyed footy a lot more. Like I really would have enjoyed it, because I lost it, and then it was 2004 when I reconnected, and I actually met Tony down there as well, and we all started playing for the Osaka Dingoes. A dingo stole my baby. A dingo.
The dingo stole a few.
So, by the way, I've never asked Tony how he ended up. How did you first go down to the Dingoes, by the way? How did you become a dingo? Hey, Tony, you dingo. How did you become a dingo?
He had the curly hair and he was a gridiron player when we first met. And then we just got on the piss.
September 7th. Me too. September 7th. That's our anniversary, dude. Me too. In 2000. Well,
So a year later.
Exactly 1 year. But symbolic. Yeah. Cool, dude. And you went to the grand final. You went to the grand final a couple of weeks later, 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking Andrew Denton, not Andrew Denton.
The Murph.
I watched a grand final in Murphy's, and there were 50 people surrounded by a 13-inch television screen with 50 people drinking beers watching a 13-inch TV screen. And it was like, who's playing? Who's in? Who's playing? Would have been 2003. I was drunk. I can't even remember much of the game.
2000, first year in Japan. Either I got it from my dad or Brenton Harris got it from his family in Adelaide. We would get VHS tapes sent over, So our parents, our dads would record the games, and it'd be any game. We'd then have to take it to Wakayama University to get it converted to the NTSC, PAL, whatever it was, because we couldn't play Melbourne or Australian VHS. And then we'd take it to one of the pubs in, not Ben Pencho, where was he? He was living in Koreatown, wherever that was. What was Koreatown called?
Yeah, Tsudahashi is Korean town.
He was living in Tsudahashi. And so we would go to Tsudahashi. We had a little bar down there, and we'd rock in there, and he'd let us plug in our tapes into the VHS, and we'd watch like Port Adelaide versus bloody the Swans. No one actually followed them, but it was just footy. I bought a rugby ball, and we'd go and have a kick during half time, even though we could record it and come back any time. But such was the need for footy. Whereas now on the internet you can watch it all live, but we were literally starved, and just having recorded footy was huge.
It was big, wasn't it? Yeah, It was big. And I remember just like it was like putting on a warm blanket watching that little 13-inch screen in like it's just that little 13-inch screen with everybody gathered around and everybody talking about the kick. You know, like every kick that was said, it was like, like whatever. Every goal meant something. It was the footy.
2003 Premiership which you were at Murphy's. That was
2003. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, massive.
I met Byron Coonerty for the first time.
Yep, I was jumping on Byron that night. I was very happy. I was screaming. Yeah. That was probably just before you came back to Japan, Tone Dukes. That was September 2003. So you were there for It was a big day. We played a practice match during the day, and then went there for post game.
Oh.
Moscow Mules.
I was there. I was there, and I was because I wasn't living in. Oh yes, I was. I was living in. I'd moved out. I must have moved out quite shortly after that. But I was living in Osaka for a couple of months, about 6 months or a year, and then I moved out again. And yeah, it's 2003. I think it could have been 2002, to be honest. It might have been 2002, and I think it was 2002. All right. And we met 2004, and we watched, and we did watch the 2004 grand final together. That would have been, that was the Blarney Stone. Yep, and we were drinking out of bottles. We were drinking long neck bottles, like at the Blarney Stone. We used to drink long neck bottles, like big bottles like this, 600 ml bottles, like they were, we were Darwin Stubby type guys, and it did quite well from that. And I tell you what, do you know I was in
Yebis long necks.
Yebis long necks, that's what they were. Do you know there was a full back who has got your hairstyle, Ross? There was a backman who went from North Melbourne, played in the 1999 grand final, then moved over to not Danny Southern, the backman. Who was that?
Danny Southern choked out Peter Sumich, nearly killed him.
Did he?
Yeah, well, you can read about it.
Yeah, well, there was a 5-time premiership player, and he wasn't actually that good. I'm trying to think. Was it Martin?
Damien Martin.
Was it Martin who went to the Lions?
Damien Martin. Zanotti.
Not Zanotti. He played for North. He went from North. I think he played at. Port Adelaide as well.
He was Fitzroy first. Not bloody Martin Pike.
Martin Pike, yeah. So I saw Martin Pike in Brunswick Street, and I remember looking at him, and he was sitting at a restaurant next to me, and I was thinking, I could take him. But he was actually really good. He was really, really good. And tough as nails.
His son is mates with my son. They go to school together at Thornbury.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Ben Pike. Yeah.
Okay. So he done well to get 5 premierships or 4 premierships. I didn't think he was like that caliber. You know, like he was a good player, but 4 premierships is bloody good for a guy of his ability.
He won Fitzroy's last best and fairest before we folded.
Is that right?
Merged. Yeah. Yep.
That's what you said 5 minutes ago.
See, Germans.
So with the footy, just to we didn't quite get to all the draft picks and all the
do we know the
trades. Well, we don't know who's going to we know who's been like free trade, and we know that Bryce Gibbs. By the way, Bryce Gibbs could win a Brownlow medal next year. That's, we're talking about betting. That would be worth putting $10 on. You could possibly get $100 for it. You know, that's a. Bryce Gibbs is going to be on the end of everything, and he has got beautiful kick, and he can kick goals from outside 50, and they're going to work through him. He's going to be off half-back flank half the time. He's going to be on the end of everything. His delivery is absolutely immaculate, and at Carlton, he doesn't get protected.
Carlton people rate him, because obviously you watch him more than other clubs do, rate him vastly higher than other clubs or other spectators do. So I'm not saying that he wouldn't, and I think that's probably good inside information. But for external spectators, you kind of don't see Bryce Gibbs as an elite talent. I see him as kind of, but not elite. But Carlton fans will say the guy is fucking elite. So, yeah, I don't know. Tom Rockcliffe might win a Brownlow. Who knows?
Yeah.
No man with a man bun will ever win a Brownlow.
If I was going for a roughie early door